welcome to our wind down version of the Getting Support series, where I'm interviewing professionals in the community to talk about and normalize the conversations around sex and intimacy. Tonight we're talking about stress. Mom stress, work stress, family stress, whatever stress you've got. And we're talking about how much stress can wreak havoc on your sex life and kill your libido. So tonight we have a good friend of mine, an acupuncturist, Lauren Espiritu. He's an acupuncturist who uses ancient modalities and traditional Chinese medicine to help restore the body's natural healing abilities and to strengthen and balance the body's defense mechanisms. Like me, Lauren is a mom of two who is also trying to find that balance and that sweet spot of time with our kiddos, our partners, and then time alone for ourselves. So tonight, not only am I so excited to bring the information from this interview and how to manage stress better to you, but it's also a little alone time for Lauren and I to catch up, to have a glass of wine, and to talk all things mama, stress, and intimacy. If you are loving this content and want to make sure that you don't miss out on the other interviews that I put out, make sure you subscribe now. And then if you're local to Ventura County, I will drop all of Lauren's information below. Make sure to check it out. You'll see in a second. She's amazing. Lauren, thank you so much. I'm very excited, as you can tell. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight for this wind down mom chat, talking about sex and stress and mom chaos, wife chaos, all of the above. I already introduced you, but please tell us more about what you do, who you are, the lovely people that you help in our community. I think people are going to love this. I'm so excited.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you inviting me on here tonight.
Yeah.
I am an acupuncturist and herbalist, and I treat all various kinds of conditions ranging from stress to, anxiety, depression, digestive issues, hormonal imbalances. I see a lot of women because women tend to take care of themselves a little bit better sometimes, and I love it. And a lot of moms, because I think a lot of moms, especially these days, need a lot of help with a lot of different things. So yeah, it's I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to work with so many wonderful people in the world. So yeah.
And I want to tell everyone, just like full disclosure, even a little bit about how you and I met. So I reached out to Lauren, gosh, I know it was way before COVID, I guess.
Like before COVID.
Year and a half, maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Lauren because part of what I do in working with mental health and coaching is I want to give clients as many resources as possible to build their tribe of people, right? So we can take care of our whole selves. And I don't even really remember how I found you, probably just searching like acupuncturist in Thousand Oaks. But I came upon your website. I'm such a visual person, so like seeing family pictures and stuff, I connected and I reached out to you and we had coffee. And then I remember thinking like, okay, if I'm gonna refer people to acupuncture, I've never tried it myself. Like I actually have to maybe try this and, get that experience so that I can be honest and, in my referrals. So I guess I started acupuncture 2 years ago.
Yeah, definitely. It's been like a couple of years. And I totally agree with you. I think that no matter what, it's great to have the experience to know how you can refer. And also when you do refer, to be able to kind of tell people maybe a little bit about what it's like and kind of give them, or whatever it is, like to make them feel a bit more comfortable too. And just to know who may benefit from it too.
And then lucky me, Lauren and I are good friends now. And part of this interview is I want to show you like what it looks like to not just like support other mamas, but create those connections. And then on top of that, having self-care time. I did a little introduction before of how like, this is not just an interview, but it's like our alone time and our wind down time.
Right,
we look at our glasses of wine. So creating those connections with other moms and then normalizing the conversation around intimacy and sex with our partners, which is one of the main reasons we're here, but then having other professionals come in and commenting on how to help us as mamas do that better. I'm just really excited for them to get the insight and lens into the magical work that you do and how it can really help with the sex life too.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay, so cheers to that. Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Okay.
Cheers. Mm.
So you said you help a lot of mamas. Tell me a little bit more about what you treat, the kind of women you're seeing, what kind of issues moms, I think, and guys too, you see both, right, are coming in with.
Yeah, definitely. Men and women. I
Mhm.
see both men and women. I mean, just a good portion of my practice is mainly just women and mostly moms.
Yeah.
I think maybe for a couple of reasons, like, I think that moms obviously we have a few things under our belts,
Just a
especially,
couple.
yeah, it's just a couple, just a few. And in general, like I said, I feel like women are a little bit more in tune with their body and like are willing to reach out and kind of work on those things. Not to say that men are not, because I have a lot of men that come in that are also more in tune. And it's great and it's awesome. I love it. But yes, I mean, a big portion of what I do is I do work with kind of like emotional disorders, like just general stress and then like anxiety, depression. I see a lot of women for fertility, prenatal care and support, and then postpartum support. And, all those things, kind of just all women's health in general. So, and my absolute favorite, I mean, I feel like now being a mom too, I feel like I really understand the trials and tribulations of motherhood. And I feel like I can really kind of bring a little bit more to the table now. Even though women's health has always been my thing, I loved working with like fertility and prenatal population anyway. But now I know so much more that goes into it, obviously. Firsthand experiences, right?
And I feel like there's so many benefits. Like if you're working with fertility or, women at any stage or women that are planning on having kids, like them getting into you and prioritizing that self-care before having kids will hopefully keep that pattern going after. And it's not just about the self-care, but it's, when we invest in ourselves and even create that self-intimacy, then, we'll talk about in a little bit, but we're more available for our partners, right? Because we've had our alone time and created space for that. And and then again, from experience, like it's my oasis every week, right? That's the time that I know, and I try to incorporate a lot more than just the 1 hour with you. But if nothing else, that's intentional, that's set, that's time.
And I mean, you're just like so many other people I see too. I mean, like I said, a lot of moms come in, it's like their little mom retreat for like that hour, taking care of themselves, that self-care, right? No one asking anything of you or calling your name or, whatever it is. So it's very nice. And I like to offer that space for people too, to just give them a little sense of peace and that time to themselves, and to work on themselves too. So I enjoy it a lot.
I love it. I love it. So last year, COVID, being a mom, trying to maintain intimacy with our partners, not the easiest task in the world this last year. But tell me what you've seen in your practice in terms of stress specifically, because that's our topic tonight. So stress and how that affects just the body and what that can do on the body, and kind of your approach to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, as we know, stress can affect so many levels of the body, mentally, emotionally, physically. Just in that fight or flight mode that your body responses to stress, like constant chronic stress, right? It actually inhibits the release or the function of sex hormones. So actually like really inhibits like your sex drive in general, right? That's bottom.
And I was even going to mention that later, but I'm glad you brought it up. Because what I usually tell my coaching clients when I'm working with them is the reason we have the fight or flight response, right? The reason, sorry, choking on my wine. The reason we have those cortisol levels, they were meant to like be in a positive way, right? If there's a risk, if there's a threat, we want to be able to respond to them, right? So stress on our bodies is a threat. So our bodies change the way we respond. And by doing so, it shuts down all the other functions and makes survival the priority. So to consummate or to procreate in the moment of survival, not really necessary, right?
100%. So the things that are less, I guess the functionings that are, it's not necessarily survival in that time, which is including your libido, right? So that just goes down the drain because we don't need that.
Exactly. So we think about how much stress we have all the time right now. Makes sense. Why some people might be struggling with libido and desire.
Right, 100%. Yeah. And so, I mean, I see a lot of people with that right now. I mean, a lot of people come in with just stress in general, and then I mean, well, to be honest, I mean, usually stress is kind of that underlying kind of condition that's going on for most things. Maybe they come in with something else, but then we, know that they obviously have a lot of stress, whether they're all of a sudden home with their kids all the time or not working or whatever has been, especially in years of COVID, right?
Yeah.
So it's usually just that underlying kind of commonality with all these different conditions in general. So if we can kind of really work on that, I feel like it really does help with everything else.
Mm-hmm. So people who aren't familiar with like acupuncture and like even what like coming in and seeing you would look like, what are we going to get? What's going to happen in a treatment session with you?
So, I mean, basically, so acupuncture, just to kind of talk about what it actually is, because I guess we haven't gone there yet, right? So acupuncture is, I mean, technically it's the insertion of very fine needles. They're very fine needles. I will say that because I know a lot of people have a very big fear of needles, and I get it, but the needles we use are nothing like the needles that you may think that we use, or needles you're familiar with from different things, like such as vaccines or whatnot, right? Nothing like that at all. So we insert those needles on specific points in the body. They run through channels in the body, which are called meridians. That's what we call them in Chinese medicine. And those meridians carry what we call like the life force, like energy, which the chi, right? The chi in the body flows through those channels. So by us actually specifically using certain points in the body, we can help navigate that chi and help it flow properly to different organ systems, including sex organs. So we can work on literally the sex organs from just releasing the chi and getting that movement in the meridians and the channels in general. So I don't know if I mean, it's a lot, but I hope that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. And this was a question I have for later, but again, since you mentioned it, so in working on the sex organs and in people coming in thinking, okay, like, we have sex and intimacy coaching. I can talk about sex and get ideas and, different tools and exercises to do with my partner. But then if I'm going into Lauren and she's helping me with my libido and desire, and she's putting needles, like where are those needles going if she's working on my sex drive? What's happening here?
Yes, no, we do not put needles into the genitalia. It's not into the areas. Okay. So yes, no, it doesn't have to be there. Just full disclosure on that. No. So the channels that I was talking about earlier, those meridian systems run through the whole length of the body. So they do go through the reproductive organs as well, and other organ systems that all kind of work together to benefit libido and sex drive and that as well. So it doesn't have to go into the actual area that we're technically treating.
And then I know that a lot of time when I come in and you're doing different spots, like you might be treating my spleen, which has been an issue, and different things, but you're not, like, sometimes you're putting it there, but other times there's other points, whether it's in my feet or my ears, so they connect, right?
Totally. Yeah, that's why I always try to tell people, like, if they come in, even just for like a pain condition, right? And they're like, oh, I have shoulder pain. And I'm like treating them like on their, hip or something. And they're like, what are you doing? And so I try to tell people that that's kind of part of it. It's all that network of those channels, those meridians that run through the body. They're all connected to those areas.
So cool.
It's awesome.
So cool. How'd you get into acupuncture? I don't know if I've ever asked you this.
Well, yes. I have a background in psychology. I know you know that, right? So it's funny because upon graduation, with just my bachelor's, my undergrad, like I remember thinking, like, is this what I wanted to continue with? Like, I loved the idea of therapy. I love talking to people. Like, I want to work through things with people and help them as much as I can. But I wanted also to kind of bring a little more to the table, like maybe something more hands-on. So I had a professor that was like a mentor to me at Channel Islands where I went. And he was really big on like Eastern medicine and just a lot of very like alternative medicines in general. So I talked to him and he was like, have you thought about acupuncture? Like, you should see my acupuncturist, go get some treatments, work on something that you need to work on, and, kind of take some time off, read a little bit, here's a book that I would recommend, these kind of things.
Yeah.
So I did exactly that. And, the acupuncturist I went to, she's now a good friend of mine too. Like I worked on I worked on some hormonal imbalances of myself, and it was amazing with just acupuncture and some herbs. I mean, we turned everything around. And like, I mean, granted, it took about 8 months because it takes a little bit of time. Acupuncture doesn't work overnight for all things, especially with hormone stuff.
Yeah.
And I found it to be amazing. And I think I was sold after that because I was like, this is awesome. I had been to other, Western medical doctors, and they're like, oh, you have to do this, or like birth control or whatever it is. And I was like, okay, that's not curing what's going on. It's just managing it, right? So I'm glad I went that route. And then here we are. It was amazing. So I was set after that. I was like, okay, I have to do this.
And then fun fact, you met your husband in
Yes.
grad school. I also met not in grad school, in college. So we both met our husbands in college. So they're fun to bring into this conversation since we're talking about stress and sex and intimacy anyways. But so cool.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I don't know, it was just amazing to me. I feel like it helped me so much. And then, obviously I want to bring that to everybody else as well.
Yeah. Right. And I think it's so important to recognize, like, when it comes to stress, there are so many avenues to manage it. Right. And not everything fits everyone. But with that being said, like, for people to know that, going back to earlier in our conversation, stress impacts libido and sex desire so much. And acupuncture is an amazing avenue, right? And we'll talk about some others probably in other series, but it's such an amazing avenue to relieve stress in all aspects of life, but as a tool to really find abundance in, the things that are most important in our lives too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to read this question because I don't want to mess it up. But the stress hormone pathway and its impact on sexual health. I know you thought about this because I kind of asked you ahead of time, so I don't want to miss this part. And even the sciencey, I think it's, I think people actually like it, to be honest, to understand like the background.
Oh, totally. Well, I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit. So, I mean, we talked about the, the fight or flight response. So that's kind of right. The Western kind of, that's what it is. That's what happens to the body. You're under chronic stress. That's what happens. Your body's like a constant fight or flight. Basically in that mode, certain responses are heightened, such as, blood pressure, heart rate, breathing, those kind of things. And other more like less essential responses, such as sex drive, are diminished because your increasing cortisol kind of takes over, right? So that's kind of like the more Western side. So in Eastern medicine, we talk about things a little bit differently. It's not the same at all. We talk more about, and typically for stress, it's more what we call liver qi stagnation. Now, it's not the actual liver organ, so it's a little bit different.
Oh, okay.
But it is, yes, not exactly that. And then there's the channel that's related to it, which that channel in itself goes through the sex organs. Okay. So that is a big channel that we work with more so for stress in general, but it can also help with any kind of reproductive issues. It can help with, like we're talking about, libido issues, things like that. So we work on it in the sense that when we say liver qi stagnation, means that qi that I was talking about earlier that flows through those channels, when it's stuck or stagnated, I mean, think of like a traffic jam on the freeway, right? So things aren't moving properly. So the idea is you want to kind of like open things up, let the traffic kind of flow. Right. That's what we're trying to do with the qi and blood through those channels.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When that happens, right? When that happens, then everything can work properly in the way it should. You get more blood flow and circulation, you know what I mean? Because we work on all that as well. And I mean, that goes to the sex organs too. I mean, blood flow to even like, the vagina or the penis, you know what I mean? All that stuff is all connected. I mean, organ systems in general. So we work on what I call like the liver channel for a lot of that. And there's other diagnoses for that and other ways that we work on if you're talking about sex drive and libido. But just kind of a little bit idea about like more stress in general is more of what we call liver qi stagnation. Okay. A lot of people tend to have that diagnosis. I do too. That's right. We're working with it.
We all do. I know it's the constant balance, right? I think as moms these days, I think we're trying to do more than ever, especially mompreneurs who are running businesses and balancing life with the kids, and then trying to keep our sex and intimacy alive and fiery with our husbands. And there are days where we're successful, and there are days where it's like, shit, like I can't do it anymore. I'm tapped out. I'm
No,
tapped out. Yeah.
100%. I mean, I try to preach what I tell people, or I try to practice what I preach. There you
Yeah,
go.
I hear
But I
you.
know that, sometimes that's hard. And I know for us, like that is a challenge for me too. End of the
Definitely.
day, after working all day and then coming home, then you're taking care of the kids and then you're trying to just get them down for bed and then, get on with the couple hours or whatever you have at night to do
Yeah.
whatever else you want to do. I mean, it's really hard. And then you have to
Yep.
like squeeze everything in those like couple hours. I
Right.
mean, I try to go to bed at 10 o'clock if I can, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Got to wake up early with those kiddos. I don't know about yours, but mine wake up pretty early. So
Hamster wheel,
yeah,
right? The
totally.
hamster wheel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think even with that and talking about that, like setting intentions, right? And again, for me, like having acupuncture, all the work you do, which I would never be able to repeat your lovely definition of all of that, but having that and knowing that's happening behind the scenes, right? In me going to and getting treatment. But for me, it's just that space, right? That intentional space and time for
Right.
myself, which that's one layer in and of itself in terms of stress management. And then you got all the work you're doing kind of underneath the layers, right?
Right. Yeah. It's equally important.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think intentions in every aspect of intimacy, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and maybe we can in our own relationships, but the thought of planning and scheduling sex dates, planning and scheduling just intimate time, right? And they're not necessarily having to be an outcome to that, but focusing on pleasure, focusing on touch as the starter, and then not having expectations of where it's going to go, but at least making the time, right? And it doesn't have to be a lot of quantity. It's the quality, right? So even if it's 5 minutes a day, if that's all we can do in terms of, gosh, there's so many things too, right? To being able to clear our minds for 5 minutes is a task in and of itself, to be able to focus on our partners, right? And just say, okay, for 5 minutes, I'll allow myself to not think about the dishes in the sink, to not think about the 5 loads of laundry that are clean that I haven't folded for 3 weeks,
Yes.
right? And to say, I am allowing myself, I'm granting myself permission to sit here with you, even if all we do is cuddle, even if all we do is hold hands or just talk, but I'm granting myself permission to focus on each other, right? And to not focus on those other things for 5 minutes, and starting there, and knowing that as couples, especially couples and parents with young kids, that we just got to start there, and we got to feed the fire, right? And then eventually, like, we'll work our way back up, and it'll feel more organic, in terms of actually engaging in sex and intercourse. And
yeah, I mean, this is something, we work on this too, me and my husband, you know what I mean? There's things that we need to work on as well. I know that I'm totally guilty of coming home and looking around and seeing all those things and making my list of things I want to check off. And, I'm just as guilty as everyone else. So and we do schedule those like date nights where we set it aside. So I know we've talked about it briefly too, because I think that was really helpful.
Yep.
Because otherwise, days go by and you're like, oh, we'll get to it tomorrow. Da, 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 even just time to ourselves, which is terrible to think about, and that's,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I did a video a while back, and I don't know if you even saw it, but like I had pushed, we're in construction mode at our home, and just the house has been chaotic, as you know, for months. And so I pushed like all the kids' toys and shit was stacked up on the table. I'm like, forget this. And I pushed it all aside, which was very liberating because I've never done that in my life. But, we see that in the movies, like, in the office space where they're, pushing stuff aside to have sex on the desk or something. And it's so sexy and passionate. But for women, it's like, usually like if you were to do that, it's like, wait a second, like, this isn't sexy right now. All this,
well, not only that, you're like, well, I have to clean that up afterwards.
Exactly. So it's so important for couples to talk about these things, because we have things in our, lives and sexual lives that put on the brakes, where it's like, yeah, like I cannot redirect right now because that's a turn off. That's a turn off.
Right.
You smell like garlic or fish. That's a turn off. Like all of these things, right? So we have brakes, and then we have accelerators, which are turn ons. It's like, okay, you help me do the dishes, the kids are in bed and they're not screaming or coming out, like, and when you create that space, and I know for moms, like it's such a turn on just to have that space, but also the time to transition, right? The help and the time to transition, it's like to just get the kids to bed and then think like, at least for me, like, okay, you ready to go now? I got the kids to bed. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, now I need a little time, a little wine, a little
Yeah.
bath, like decompress.
Totally.
It's so necessary, but it's also time you can do with your partner, right? So
Sure.
I'll be transparent. Like I take full advantage. It's like, okay, I want to be intimate, but I know myself and I know what I need, right? I need that time to decompress. You feel like giving me a back massage right now, right? You feel like, laying in bed and cuddling and just talking. Sometimes I gotta get like the to-do list, like, okay, my son's birthday, this happened today, all this. Okay, now I've cleared my mind. I have space for you. I'm ready to go, right? And for partners to understand that, that transition for men too is so necessary. And even to speak about men, to not assume as women that our guys are always ready to go either, right? That some of them need that transition time just as much as we do, and to create space for that, and either individually or together, but to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I think that's a great point that you mentioned too, that you guys like do it together, like kind
Oh
of
yeah.
wind down to it. I think that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just depends on the mood, it just depends on
Yeah,
what
that's
mood I
true.
am. Sometimes it's like, I was talking to Katie, the pelvic floor therapist, about this the other day, but being like touched out, right? It's like if I've been with the kids all day and it's like right now, like I don't want the back massage. Like I don't want to be touched anymore. Let me go take my bath. Let me go have my glass of wine. And then like I can, get those things, like the energy off me for a second, and I'll be more ready. But then there's some times where it's like, no, like a back massage, that time together sounds nice as that transition, but keeping the lines of communication open, right?
Yeah, you're right, because that doesn't always work. I get the
Mhm.
touched out thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. The kids, man. Also, I mean, about the kids too.
Uh,
If your kids are at the age, I know for us, especially on the weekends and when we're home, like that's the ideal time to spend time together, right? We don't have the stresses of the week, but also the kids are around, right? So it's like, yeah, like, our in the mood music is cartoons downstairs, right?
yeah.
So we're, setting the kids, setting them up, we lock the door and we make time, right? Sometimes that's all we've got. Is it the most
Yeah.
romantic? you know but sometimes like that rally, that quickie sex, that's what we have, right? And to invest in those times too, knowing that it's not always going to be that,
Yeah.
right? We might be in the phase of quickie sex now, but there are times for gourmet, and it's just different chapters of our lives and embracing each chapter.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
very true.
Yeah.
Yes. Here
Yeah.
we are.
The acupuncture, you guys, can be foreplay too, right? Like you go,
Yeah.
you have time, that can be your foreplay.
Yes.
You're
We
like,
giving each other acupuncture treatments.
what?
Are you saying giving each other acupuncture treatments could be the foreplay? I'm confused.
No, like if like a woman or a guy goes in to
Yeah.
get acupuncture from you,
Oh,
you're not like, okay, guys, she's doing her treatment. It's not anything else, but it's like, I'll say it's solo play, right? Where it's that transition period, right?
oh, just your mindset to just be to
Yes, yes,
yourself and be
yes,
calm and relax. I mean,
yes.
yeah, 100%. People walk out the door just kind of like floating on clouds. A lot of times they're very relaxed and kind of,
Mhm.
I mean, it's just all the endorphins are floating around there. So it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
They're in a different state of mind than when they usually come in for the
for
most part.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, for me, I like to like linger in the moment and
Yeah.
like lavish the moment. So I like to, and again, it's about intention. It's like I like to, I kind of have my mornings like wake up late, and then I know I'm coming into you, and then I know like my husband has the kids and I'm good, and I can go grab a coffee and just
Yeah.
linger a bit. But then also, I talk to my clients a lot about how sex, especially for women, is often a decision. Like we have to put ourselves, especially as moms and women, in the mindset of like, okay, I'm going to get myself in the mood and I know what needs to be done to do that, right? I'm going to maybe go to acupuncture and get some help with the stress from the week. I'm going to go grab a coffee and just have some alone time. I'm going to tell my husband to set up the kids and be ready, but like, you know, slowly getting in the mood and making that decision, because spontaneous desire as a mom, a lot of the times isn't there as much as it used to be when we were younger or single or without kids or any of that. So again, adapting and having the tools to help us adapt.
No, that's true. And I know that's very difficult. I mean, I know even, you know, I remember like my husband, like, you know, and sorry if he watches this, but you know, like, and back in the day, like things were different. Yeah. I mean, we had all the time in the world to do different things and enjoy each other, you know, mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Yeah.
Like we have all these other things. And so, yeah, it's just different. And I don't know if it's harder for the woman too and the mom. And I feel like, you know, I don't know, my kids, I love my kids, but you know.
Oh, you do.
Oh my gosh. So yes, anyway, either way, bottom line is, setting that intention and kind of creating that space and going through the motions, whatever it is, setting yourself up for success, essentially, right?
For sure.
Super important. You have to put a little more effort into that these days. I agree.
So and it's, you know, the to-do list and going back to stress, like I know a lot of times with my couples and I'm telling them like, you got to make time for yourself. And I know it's a cliche, but you do. And it's like, Nicole, I don't have a spare second, but it's really remembering that we are in control. It doesn't seem like that always. It seems like our schedules and our lists are determined for us.
Yeah.
But ultimately we are in control. Ultimately we can create space. And again, it doesn't have to be quantity, right? It can be small little segments. But really prioritizing what's important, right? We can shift things around. We can prioritize. And I know it's hard. It's not that it's it's hard. It's hard sometimes. But really talking to our partners and even talking to our friends, and getting that feedback, getting that support, and taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of our relationships and ultimately set good examples for our kids too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. Cheers to that.
Oh, cheers. Yes, 100%.
Cheers to that. Cheers to that. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I think this is amazing. I hope this gives everyone kind of a good introduction to just self-care, creating space and time, whether it's, you know, interviewing friends, going out for wine, coffee, going to acupuncture, talking to a coach about, you know, boosting that intimacy, reviving that intimacy in our relationships. But you and I are both available. You know, I'm going to drop all of, you know, I have said this before, but I'm going to drop all of our information below. Lauren is local to the Ventura County area, as am I, but I also have some telehealth options. Our info will be below. God, I think that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you. Having a glass of wine with you.
Yeah, I'm sure we will finish our late night happy hour after this, but everybody take care. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions, concerns. Again, Lauren's amazing, and I hope this was helpful. I hope you take some time, let's say Thursday, I hope you take some time this weekend to take care of yourselves, to maybe create some of that space for yourself and your relationship. But I hope we can be examples for you too, that it is possible. It's not always easy, but it's possible, and we're here to support you if you need more help.
Yep.
Okay. Love you. Thank you, guys.